Well, thank you for joining us here in the Storycraft Cafe. I am so excited to have Victoria Benton Frank on the show with me today. She's got a brand new book that just dropped yesterday, and it is called My Magnolia Summer. And I'm reaching here so I can show you my brand new hardcover copy of it. Amazing book. You're going to love this.
Well, thank
What
you.
a great book to start summer off with, Victoria. This is it brought me so much joy. So I know it's going to for a lot of people. But welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I hope everyone feels like it's a great book for the
A-
summer.
Absolutely. Um, Victoria, I love to start the conversation off with a fun question, and
Okay.
so here's one I'm gonna toss over to you.
Oh,
What is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
wow. Um, First memory of wanting, I don't know what my first memory of wanting to be a storyteller was, but I
Yeah.
remember when I was called to be a storyteller. Is that,
Oh, yeah, I love it.
yeah. So I was
Tell me
riding in the
more.
car with my wild in laws. At the time, they were my boyfriend's parents. And we're going on this crazy road trip all around the country of Italy to visit family. And I was in the car and I was thinking about life and I was looking at this beautiful landscape and I heard a voice like it sounds very woo woo, but I heard a voice that was like, "You're going to write books like your mom." And I was like,
Wow.
I don't know where that's coming from. And I don't know if it was because I was in like a deep reflection or if I was praying and I didn't know what, you know what I mean? Like it's sort of,
Yeah.
I was in like that state. Um, and I will never forget it because it was such a like moment for me and I put it off. I didn't do
Yeah.
anything with that for years. And then my mom started putting it in my ear and she was like, you know, you should be a writer too. Like you're funny, you're good at telling stories. And I was like, no. Like I'm an artist, I'm creative like you are, but I am a storyteller with dance or theater or with food or, you know, I did all these other creative fields. I was kind of running away from my destiny and then, you know, mama always knows best. Like she
Oh
called
yeah.
it, she knew what was happening. So I think that I started to write in secret and sort of evolved on its own. Like, but yeah, so I don't remember my first memory of like wanting to be a storyteller. I think I've always been a storyteller. Like I used to write plays
Yeah.
and put on shows when I was a little girl, because I always loved theater. But I think I knew I was called to be a writer at a certain time.
I This is a topic that I've explored for 10 years of
Cool.
doing author podcast.
Yeah.
Is there a writer gene? Like are we born storytellers? You know, in a lot of ways the human creature is a
Yeah,
storytelling
I was gonna
creature, you
say
know.
that. Yeah, it's kind of
Um
survival. Like it's sort of,
yeah,
you know, around a campfire kind of thing. Like it's very primal to tell
yeah,
stories. So I think in every tribe, there's got to be one, you know,
yeah,
because we keep the entertainment going.
right.
So, and I think stories, like I said earlier, you know, stories are told in different ways, sometimes in songs, sometimes writing, sometimes, you know, just telling stories about like family history or whatever, memories, you know. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a gene, but there's certainly a role that needs to be filled. You know,
Mhm.
like there's a
Yeah.
caretaker in the family. There's a, you know, someone's a hunter, someone's a gatherer. You know, like that kind of stuff. I think it is
Yes.
primal to be a storyteller, but I do also think it's a gift. I mean,
Yeah.
I hope I have it. I hope I'm not a huge hack, but my mother definitely had a gift, and there are certainly people who either got it or they don't. You know, and
Yeah.
it's a craft that you hone, you get better at it, but it's a seed that's either in you or it's not.
Yeah. Well, if you gather 100 people in a room and you say, how many of you think you have a story in you that you would like to tell? I think a lot of
100 of
hands
them.
would go. Yeah,
A
almost
100 of
everyone
them.
would put their hands up.
Yeah, and, you know, I think writing a book is a lot like owning a restaurant. Like, I say this all the
Mm,
time, like, my husband's a chef. The number 1 failing industry you can be in is opening your own restaurant because
yes.
everyone tells stories, everybody cooks, everybody thinks they can be a chef, and everyone thinks they can be an author. It's a very different thing. And I think I've learned to get to here step by step. But being an author and being a writer are two different things. And then being an aspiring writer and being an actual, so there's levels, you know, but,
Yes.
and it takes a lot of different things, I think, to do it. And I'm learning the discipline, which is not my favorite. I don't like that word. So that's what I'm not good at yet, and I'm working
Yeah.
on it. But I'll get there. But as of yesterday, I'm an author, so that's really
Yes,
exciting.
you are. Yes,
Yeah,
you are. Yes. And that is something no one can ever take away from you.
that's right.
Yeah.
HarperCollins made it official. Thank you, William Morrow.
That's right. That's right. You
Yeah.
you mentioned your mother a couple of times.
Mhm.
The illustrious Dorothea Benton Frank,
Yeah.
and who stamped her mark on the literary world, what,
Yeah.
almost 30 years ago when she published her first book.
Yeah, that would be about right, almost 30, because
Yeah.
I'm going to be 38 in November. And so
Wow.
she started when I was like 8, like 7 or 8. Yeah, so it's about around that time.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was it like growing up in the house with someone, that larger than life, for one, but then also who told stories that were larger than life and that so many people loved? And it's like you have mom, and then you also have to share her with the rest of the world. What was that like?
I never felt like I was like there was a problem with me sharing her with the rest of the world. I always thought it was such an honor. It was very clear to me that I was able to go to those private schools and go on those vacations because of the rest of the world investing in my mother. So I was always,
Touche.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like I was
Yeah.
always like, yeah, you want an autograph? Like, come on, you want to buy one book? Buy two. Like, it was never like a that was, and it was normal for us.
Yeah.
It had, there were sometimes it got weird. Like if we were at a restaurant and we were having a really serious conversation between the two of us and someone would come up, sometimes it was a little bit like, I'm really just trying to have dinner with my mom and we're in the middle of something, but at the same time, it's like, I really want to say hello to you. And I know this took a lot to come to this table. So like, you know,
Right.
but growing up with her, for the most part, actually, well, I will say her entire fan base, save like one or two out of, we're talking millions of people, are lovely, real people. Like
Yeah.
I think it would be a different story if my mother was Stephen King, because the fan base is different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
But for my
Agreed.
mom, they're all like women like me. They drive minivans. They got kids. They know mean casserole. Like they're not, like they're not like,
Yeah.
they're normal, and they want to see her
Right.
succeed and they want to see me succeed. So it's like this really cool dynamic of just expanding my family. But growing up with my mother in the house, we all have larger than life personalities. And so it was really a competition to see who could make the other one laugh, like who could be funnier, who could be smarter, who could be more clever. It
Yeah.
wasn't about beating the other person, but it was about being the winner of like joy spreading. Like it was
Yeah.
never like I could get away with anything as long as I made you laugh. Like I didn't really have a curfew because my mom was like, go ahead and stay late. Try to go to school tomorrow. See how that feels. Like it was never, she was just
Yeah.
very like, but whatever you think it was times a million. And
Mhm.
she was a believer in magic and making magic happen. And holidays were unbelievable in my home. And they still are. I mean, like I carry that on now. And it's a lot of work, but she wanted to make those memories happen. And so every day was a celebration. Every day was a gift, so we never went to bed angry. But my mom and she made me believe that the rules didn't apply to her and I. Like
Mm.
we were in a club, just the two of us. And so I could achieve anything I wanted because my mom could achieve anything she wanted, and it didn't apply to us. And like it didn't matter that and still I'm living like that. It's probably not so smart, but I'm living like I don't have an English degree. Like I'm not classically trained in story crafting. Like,
Yeah.
and she wasn't either. But here I am writing a novel and she did it, so I'm doing it.
Right.
And it's
Right.
it's just really I don't know. She gave me this bravery and this confidence and this fearlessness that I think is so important to spread on to the next generation, especially with my kids myself. But yeah, growing up with her was wild and crazy and eccentric and fun and the best in the best.
I love it. Did
Mhm.
she pass on um any writing tips along the
Sure.
way? Like I
Yeah.
understand that like when you went to college and stuff, you pursued um cooking and yeah,
So I did
culinary.
theater.
Yeah.
I did theater first.
Okay, theater first.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a degree of theater performance, which shocks zero. When people find that out, they're like, "Yeah." Um, I had these events last night and yesterday during the day, and it was supposed to be a reading, a talk, and then a Q&A, and it turned
Yeah.
straight up into stand-up comedy. Like I go completely rogue with a microphone. Like it's just tales of the past with Victoria.
Right.
Um, what was the question?
Did she pass on any writing
That's
tips?
on writing event. Yes.
Even though you had a different path, that it didn't
Yeah.
look like you were going to be an author
Right.
at first. So how did she handle, passing the gift on to you when it looked like you weren't going to pursue that path?
Well, she was like yelling at me for a really long time to finish the book, finish the book, finish the book. And she read it without my permission, or the beginning of it at least, and was sobbing, telling me that if I didn't do it, she would spank me. And then if, I was grounded forever. And then if I didn't write it, she was going to write it and steal it. So, someone was going to tell that story because it was good.
Yeah.
And my mom, like I said, I wasn't classically trained or formally trained. I learned at the School of Frank, and she passed away before I finished the novel. But she did get to read a little bit of it, which was great. And she gave me some wonderful advice on how to be a writer and how to craft a story. And the most important one was to write a story you would want to read. I think that's really important because I'm a reader first. I care about books. I care about stories. I care about authors. I care about the art, the arc of the craft. And also, when it's a very intimate act to read a book, like you're creating a world that goes into someone's head that lives with them for a couple of days, sometimes a
Right.
month, sometimes a year. I mean, if you write a series, those are people that live in someone else's their head forever.
Yeah.
It becomes, if you have success, it becomes like look at what happened with Bridgerton, or Star Wars, or any, like all these
Right.
books, like these things blow up. Game of Thrones. I mean, it's normal, like talk now. It's in social media. It's in everywhere you go. So you're injecting a story into the world. And so if you're going to do that, if you write a book you want to read, you're going to create a good space. And also to tell the truth, even if you're writing fiction, because fiction is truth, truth is fiction. And if it's not believable, then you're going to lose the protagonist, you're going to lose your audience, the book is going to be a mess. You have to tell the truth so the reader can identify with what the protagonist is saying and the journey. So those are probably the two biggest pieces of advice. And what else? There's always an excuse not to write. So try to get your ass in the chair.
Always.
Yeah, that's
always.
it's butt in the chair. That's all it is. Like that's 80% of it.
Yeah. Butt in chair, hands on keyboard. That's
hands on keyboard. Keep it moving. You can clean up a mess. You can't clean up nothing. So put something down. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, this book, My Magnolia Summer,
Yeah.
was this the book that you had started and then your mom threatened you to finish? So take us back to the very beginning.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by where stories are born because
Yeah.
in one moment, the story does not exist in any form or fashion.
Yep.
And then either a character walks onto the stage of your mind and you're like, oh, what's she up to? Or maybe you're visiting, the Low Country and you look out and this thing just starts, whatever it is, whatever that catalyst is, then the story is there and it's your job as the writer to dig it out, excavate it, polish it
is an
up, and then
excavation. Yeah.
and then the book is born.
Yeah.
So what was that moment of creation for you?
Ooh, I got to think about that. I don't know. It was such an organic, and even now, like with the book I'm working on now, it's sort of the characters are sort of talking to me without sounding like I need to be in a facility.
This is a safe place to talk like that.
It's a mental
Trust
health
me.
safe place. Good to know that I'm great. I cannot talk about all this. Yeah, I think it started from me being inspired by other books, I mean, because I'm a reader first, like I said.
Yeah.
So I loved the Yaya Sisterhood, and I loved Steel Magnolias, and I loved Fried Green Tomatoes, and I wanted to read a book like that. And I went to the bookstore and there was nothing that I hadn't already read. And I know there's Southern fiction. My mom wrote 20 books and her books, like I love them, but I wanted more. I wanted something else. I wanted to scratch that itch, so I
Yeah.
was like, let me try to do that myself, which of course is highly ambitious. And, the whole time you have like massive imposter syndrome. Um, but I just started to hack away at it. And I thought, let me make a character who is like me, but not me. And let me go through these problems that I have in a fictional setting. Um, and it's funny. It's like when I decided I wanted to write, plot started coming to me. And that's sort of how it is now too. Like I'll hear a story or a conversation or a piece of music and I'll be like, ooh, 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 let me tap into that. Like, how can I work that into my story? And sometimes I just get on the computer and just start typing and it just comes out. I don't really know. That's what I'm talking about. It's a gift. Like it literally just, you got to show up every day to your computer and honor it as it pours out of you.
I think I heard your mom, or I know I heard your mom tell this story sometime in the past, where she was talking about the beginning of her writing career and how she wanted to buy the family home,
Yes, yes.
and
Her mom's home. Mhm.
yeah, and then your dad and her, kind of had this,
Yeah.
he said, "No, we're not doing it,"
Oh my
and
god, yeah.
and kind of he kind of put the challenge, well, write a book, make the money, and do it yourself, and
Mhm.
that story kind of became legendary of
And
how
it's
her writing
true. I
career.
mean, it's literally, she's like, "I'm gonna buy that book. I'm gonna write that book. I'm gonna buy that house, and you can't come in." And that's what it was.
Right. Well,
Basically, that's what happened. So,
when I started reading My Magnolia Summer and I kind of understood the setup of the story,
yeah,
it kind of echoes that story a little bit in a way,
yeah,
where Magnolia has family there, and she winds up coming back and reconnecting, and I could feel the ghost of your mother's story there. If
cool.
you, it's obviously not just like your mom's story, but I kind of felt like I've heard this
Yeah,
story before. I've heard something like it. Was that an inspiration to were there
no.
homages at
Mm-mm.
all?
I mean, I put some of her characters in my book, as little Easter eggs for the readers. But no, it's funny. They're like a lot of the reviews that have come out have said that they're like they're in the style of Dot Frank, but it's still her own style. But I
Right.
am the style of Dot Frank. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So of course my book would be like her, a
of
little bit like
course.
hers, but a
Yeah.
little different. I'm my own person, but I'm definitely her kid. Like the
Well,
more time you spend with me, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's little Dottie. I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, when you hear her voice every day of your life,
yeah,
her voice it is
right.
influencing what you do. It has to.
Right, and we're both very tied to the Low Country, and I think
Yeah.
missing the Low Country was a theme in all of her books, and for me, I went through that a little bit when I lived in New York. I missed coming back here. This is always, even though I grew up in New Jersey, this has always been home. Like, I've always been called to this land, and I think space and rooting and location is very, very important, a sense of
Yeah.
what home is. I think it's different for everybody, but on some level, if you stand like if you're Irish and you go to Ireland, you're going to feel the memory that space has of those stories and those legends and how the landscape is so, especially here in Charleston, the landscape is a character on its own. So
Yes.
when you live here and you're like, or you spend time here, you're romanced by it. And if you have any kind of historical or blood relation to the land, I think you can't get it out of your system once you've been here. Like, if I'm
Yeah.
angry, I'm definitely from New Jersey, but every day.
Well, I'm from South Mississippi, and I feel that same connection that
Yeah,
I we lived out west for a while in Colorado, and I was
cool.
still a Mississippi boy in Colorado.
You can't
It
shake it,
you can't
like,
shake it. It's
yeah,
just
you can't shake
there's
it.
something about the soil the tomatoes were grown in or
And I
something.
say
It's
it's the
just
pluff mud between your toes. It's just, it's the
right.
same. Yeah,
It's all
you can take
same.
the boy
Yeah.
out of Mississippi, but yeah,
Right.
yeah, and I lived in New Jersey and I lived in Manhattan, and I lived in Connecticut, and I did all that. And there's certainly part of those places as well that have influenced and shaped me. But I think the South, especially, we're so prideful of our area, and we're so like Louisiana is a really good example of that. Like I never understood Mardi Gras until I went to New Orleans and saw the Mardi Gras museum and like met people that were like, my great grandmother was a page and I'm like, what? Like that just seems like a Halloween situation. Oh no, it's like super serious. And I love that. Like pride of where you're from.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And I think Charleston for me, I've never really been proud of New Jersey, but I'm very proud. But I will say this, there ain't nothing like a Jersey girl. Like we are strong, resilient, funny, loyal. Like we got your back. We're going to tell you the truth, even if it hurts your feelings. Like it's nice. Jersey women are great.
Yeah.
And it's cool because now everyone in South Carolina is from New Jersey. So it's fine. Everyone's
Well,
moving here.
and it's so funny because we have a I don't know if you'd call it a genre or a distinction or what, but we talk about Southern literature.
Yeah. It's a
Nobody
genre.
talks nobody
Yeah.
talks about Midwestern literature or Northeastern literature. It's not a thing.
Because nobody moves to those places. Those are places you move away from, and you don't want to take the north to the beach.
True.
You know,
Right.
like you don't move to New York. I mean, maybe as a career, but you don't move. Okay, you don't move to Connecticut.
Right.
You move to South Carolina or even Mississippi. I mean, you know, and you don't move away from it either. Like even when you do, you return. The
Right.
South has been romanticized in literature forever,
Yeah.
in good ways and in bad ways, obviously.
Of course.
But there's always been a fascination with being Southern. My mother and I always said everyone secretly wants to be Southern, and I think it's true.
I think it's true too. I
Mhm.
do. You know. So your mother gave you the challenge: finish this book, or
Yeah,
she's gonna beat you over the head, spank you,
those are
what
dying words
whatever.
too. Yes, yeah.
What was the motivation? What was the catalyst to take the story that you'd kind of piddled with for years and you know really get after it?
I think it was a challenge, and it's a love letter to my mom too, in a way. Like just, and I didn't really know that as I was writing it, but reading the finished product now and knowing where I am in my personal journey and in life, I can see that that's exactly what this book is. It's a love letter to carrying on legacy within a family, and that's what I'm doing,
Right.
intentionally or not. So I think the kick in the butt came really from my father. That was like, you need to finish this. Like, this is just ridiculous. It's good. It's good work. Like, you're being stupid. Like, I don't care if you are insecure or whatever, like, you're being stupid.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And I really, literally, the entire time, I thought it was just my mom and dad, because I was their kid, thought I could do it. I wasn't really good. Like I didn't have any real talent. Like I was funny. I knew I was funny. And I
Yeah.
knew I could like get a microphone and make a crowd happy. And I know I can sell. So like those two things, and she can kind of write a book. We got an author. That's what I thought it was. But turns out that's not true. Turns out I'm not so bad at it. I'm okay. I mean, there are better authors out, a lot more better than me. um, some of them who have endorsed this book, which I'm like, have you lost your mind? Thank you. Like, and I am waiting for everyone to I'm waiting for Ann Patchett to call me and be like, I was just doing that as a favor.
Right.
But she didn't. She didn't. And she like to have people in my field, I guess now, who believe in my work. It's surreal. This whole thing is so weird. Like it's so surreal. I lived with this book for so long and it wasn't done. And then it was done and sold and now it's coming out. It's like,
Look. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, like I had it on my desk for 7 years. Like it
Yeah.
was, and in that time I grew up. I went from being a girl to a woman. My mom passed away. I had 2 kids. I got married. I mean, not in that order, but there was like so
Yeah.
much stuff that was so many big life events that changed me. So Maggie changed too, my main character. She grew up in her book.
Do you feel like that you had to go through those life experiences to be able to bring those experiences to
100%.
the book?
Yes, absolutely. And I think when I started writing my book, I was 30, 31. And I think I was not experienced enough to really bring authenticity and grit to the page. I hadn't gone through something horrific like losing your mother.
Yeah.
I hadn't been scared. Like when you go through, also, I think I'm funnier now because I've gone through such dark times. I mean, like you can't write and access that part of your soul unless it's been really rocked. Like
Yeah.
losing my mother was horrific. It was horrific and tragic. I was pregnant with my daughter. I mean, it was like literally, if you wrote the worst situation in normal circumstances, that was what it was for me and my family. And it was fast and it was unexpected and it was just so traumatic. So I think instead of leaning into the depression that could have easily happened, I decided to do something with it and channel it into my book, because I sound like so full of myself right now, but like I really am living for my mom now, and she can't write, I can, so let's do it. Like let's sell the shit out of this book. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
let's write the hell out of it. Like
Right.
let's not just write something funny. Let's make them cry. Let's, it's like the whole, I want to pull everything out and work twice as hard,
Yeah.
and just be a totally devoted to this, because one, it turns out I can, and two, what a way to honor my mom.
What a way to honor your mom. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the book specifically.
Okay.
We've talked all around the book. Let's talk about
all
the
around her. Yeah, we have.
Maggie. Where
Yeah.
Magnolia. Where did this character come from?
I don't know. People ask me this all the time. Where do you get your inspiration for characters? I don't know. I think Maggie was me. I think I created the situation, and then Maggie was me reacting to it, and then everybody else in the novel was an opposite of what I had experienced. Also not intentional, but I knew the mother-daughter relationship would be a bad one because I had such a good one. So I wanted to explore what that felt like, because I have a lot of women in my life that have terrible relationships or complicated with their mother. So I wanted to write a bad one. Gran, I didn't really know my grandmothers, so I thought, would it be cool to be raised by your grandma? And what would that look like? So I wrote her. I don't have a sister, so I wrote a sister. I just sort of this is really the first half of this book is my exercise, my workbook of how I learned how to write. It's self-taught. Yeah. Writing is self-taught. I mean, you can learn, you can take classes, but you got to sit there and do the work. So I think that's, I don't know where Maggie came from. Maybe it's another personality I have. I don't know. My redheaded personality.
So this is a story of Maggie coming home.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the setup for the book. If people don't know anything about it, kind of what's going on with these characters, and who is Maggie, and what is she getting herself into?
So Maggie is a late 20s, early 30 something who is living currently in New York City, and she's an aspiring chef, which I was. She has beautiful red hair and green eyes, which I have blue eyes and black hair. I've always wanted green eyes and red hair. Turns out my daughter has that. By the way, I birthed her. Next time I'm going to write a book about winning the lottery and see what happens.
There you go.
Yeah. So she's an aspiring chef. She's from the Low Country. She grew up in Sullivan's Island, and they had a restaurant in their family called the Magic Lantern, which is based off of a restaurant that was in my family in Charleston. That was my great grandmother's in the 30s and the 40s, which is pretty cool. And so her Gran, who raised her, gets in an accident, and she gets a call from her sister in the middle of service one night at the restaurant in New York. And she rushes back down south to be by her grandmother's side, and she realizes that she might lose her. And in the process, she also realizes that the restaurant is not what it once was, that it's falling up down around her ears, and it's losing its integrity. It's losing its like strength, its history, all that, its legacy. It's been turned into this nasty, cheap seafood restaurant, and it's just sacrilegious to her, and she's horrified. And so she realizes that they need her help, and she can't make up her mind. And it takes until the end of the book really for her to decide, do I stay home, or do I continue to live my life in New York, or can I have both? And then there's a love story woven in, and there's relationships between her mother and her Gran and her sister. And it's about rising to the occasion, rising to the challenge.
You mentioned earlier, and I meant to say this earlier, but you talking there just kind of brought it back up, that you said that it wasn't until the end of the book that you started realizing kind of what this book was. And isn't it funny how themes kind of present themselves at the end? And I've always been fascinated when people say, I wrote this book because I had this theme in mind, and this was an exploration of, and that has never worked like that for me.
No.
It's always that it's something that I've wrestled with,
Yeah.
deep down, and I didn't even know it, or
It's
maybe I
it's
did,
yeah,
but
it's
this had
deep
nothing to do with that.
subconscious questions that come out, and I
Yeah,
think that the death of my mother was also that's a hidden theme in there, and also, like, my embarking on my career now. I mean, I was gonna be a writer beforehand. Like, my mom was alive, we wrote Teddy Spaghetti together, like, this was gonna
right,
be the path. That was gonna be my door into the world. That's not what happened. But, the arc of Maggie's professional decisions mirrors what's happening to me now, and I never intended that. I thought it was gonna be a love story. I thought this was gonna be, like, borderland romance, and it just never did that. It turned out to be something else entirely, which, all the best stories are. They're all
oh, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely,
But it's funny
um,
that you said that that's what it is. It's like internal questions you don't even know that you have. Writing the book was my way of working that out. I just didn't realize
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Exactly, and that happens with me all the time. I'd never
Yeah.
set out to say something. It just
Yeah.
the
There's
thing
no
just comes out.
message. Yeah,
Right,
there's no message. That, like, sometimes, yeah, like, I see, yeah, I mean, I guess it's about finding your own voice and standing up for yourself and all those things, but, like, it wasn't intentional. I'm letting my characters tell their story, and within the story, there's a theme. I mean, maybe there's a lesson in there. Maybe you and I need to look at our lives and see where the arc's going, talk to the
right,
writer. We need to see an
exactly,
outline. I wanna know what happens in the next chapter so I don't have so much
exactly.
anxiety.
Exactly. The setting is so lush and beautiful in this book. You really transport us into the world of the story. The
Yeah.
characters are you just I fell in love with 80 characters, and
Thank
there's
you.
just so much going on here. Um will you continue to take us to this world?
Oh, hell yeah. My second book is a sequel. So
Okay.
I am so into the Low Country. Like, I am in love with it. And it possesses me. Like, I mean, there's a line in there. I think it's in one of the first lines where she listens to the breeze push through the fronds of the palmetto trees, and you just think about what that sounds like. Like, if you ever
Yeah.
get a chance to listen to the fronds of a palmetto trees in a windstorm, it sound like it's hypnotic. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, like, go right to sleep. And I think, Spanish moss and knotty oaks and rolling angry tempests in the ocean and dunes and I mean, there's just so much to write about. Yet, and it's all sensory. It smells so
Yeah.
good and it feels so good. And there's something in the air that happens every time the seasons switch that, like, sort of is the start of a next story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a landscape plays a huge part. It's the main character, if not a supporting one.
Yeah. Well, as of yesterday, this book is out everywhere.
Yeah.
And I know that the journey of a book is crazy. This has likely been off of your desk for quite a while already, while you went through edits and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And you did mention that you're writing a sequel.
Yeah.
What's kind of the status of the sequel? Where are you in that process?
We are like 75 pages in.
Okay,
So a good hunk.
good.
I have to start getting down to business now, after this tour, which, has been going on for 2 days. So, but
Yeah,
I'm at my desk right now in between stops. So I'm like, oh my God, I want to get writing, but I, I don't have time. It is, so it's the sister story, and I can't tell too much about it because it'll spoil the first one because
yeah,
they build on each other. But it's the same thing. It's the same theme of stepping up to the occasion, and when life gives you circumstances, how are you going to respond to it, and how you craft your ability and identity as an adult, as a woman, and how you let those circumstances shape you. And are you going to lean into the bad stuff? Or are you going to triumph? Are you going to champion it's about being your own champion.
love it. My Magnolia Summer is available everywhere now. If you prefer to read on your Kindle or listen to the audiobook, we're going to have links in the show notes where you can go to Amazon and grab it, or go visit your local bookstore, support local books, and you can grab a hardcover edition just like I have right
Yes,
here.
local bookstores are my favorite.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Victoria, if people are just discovering you and want to go along the journey with you, what's the best place for them to find you online dig into all the great stuff you're up to?
Instagram is the easiest way at Victoria Benton Frank. I am on there all the time, and usually I'm being really silly on it. I'm not. Sometimes it's book related, and sometimes it's just coming with me to the fondue restaurant. Like I don't, you don't know. Could be my ratchet children. This could be anything. I'm on Facebook as well, although currently in Facebook jail. But you can find me.
It happens.
It happens. I don't know. We don't know what happens. Harper's like looking into it. But my personal account, Victoria Peluso on Facebook, I'm right now. And then my mother's account, I also oversee. So you can get in contact. I'm very able to get in contact with.
Great. We'll link up all those places and make it easier for folks to find you. Victoria, this has been so much fun chatting. Please come back and let's do it again.
Oh, I would love it. I'd love it. I want to come to Mississippi. I want to play with everything that's on your shelf over there. All those toys and the Gandalf staff in the back and the sword. Like, I'm into it. Like,
come on. We'll go on an adventure.
Yay.
Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you.